Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a question that, on the surface, seems deceptively simple. But it's really the bedrock of expertise, especially in these, well, in specialized or innovative fields. The question is, how do you come to know what you know? It sounds like a basic, biographical question. But we're going to dig into the philosophical weight this question carries, especially when someone is sharing knowledge that doesn't quite fit the standard mold.
It's that moment where knowledge meets bureaucracy. We've been looking at this argument from Jaime Hoerricks, a PhD, who basically says that when someone asks, how did you come to this work? It's almost never a simple request for a timeline.
Or for proof.
Or for proof, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a demand for situating.
For lineage.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. To really unpack that distinction, we want to show you the, I think, radical difference between just handing over a list of credentials as proof and tracing a deeply personal internal lineage as the real source of your confidence. Right. And to set the stage, the specific expertise we're talking about is Gestalt language processing, or GLP.
GLP.
For anyone who isn't familiar, GLP is, it's a different way of acquiring language. It's not the typical linear word-by-word process. A Gestalt language processor picks up big chunks of language, phrases, scripts, whole sentences as single units of meaning.
Which makes the author's point so critical. Because if your own way of processing the world is already nonlinear, how can you possibly use a linear system to validate it?
You can't.
And Hoerricks says right up front that their knowledge came through this very embodied process. They cite 4 sources specifically.
Body, memory, teaching, and time.
And that framework, body, memory, teaching, and time, that's the map we're going to follow today.
Okay, so let's start where the author does, with the constant questioning.
The interrogation, yeah.
They note that it doesn't matter the context. It could be an informal chat or a big presentation. The question always comes up. How did you come to this work? Why do you speak about GLP with such confidence? It's unavoidable.
Right. And on the surface, those seem like pretty reasonable questions.
Totally reasonable. If you're learning from an expert, you want to know they're credible.
Of course.
But Hoerricks says that behind the question, there's this implied expectation, a subtle demand.
And what is that demand exactly?
The demand is that the knowledge has to be located somewhere, externally. It has to be situated in, credentials, certifications, or sanctioned pathways of expertise.
So before you can even get to the substance of the work.
Before you even talk about GLP, yeah.
The speaker first has to present the right paperwork to prove their worth.
It's like a validation traffic jam.
That's a good way to put it.
The system is basically saying, stop, don't tell me what you know. First, tell me where you got permission to know it.
And if you don't have the right forms filled out, that knowledge is immediately suspect.
It's an external litmus test that puts authority over actual insight.
And that's a huge problem for any knowledge that's new or synthesized or developed through, let's say, unconventional routes.
Absolutely. If your expertise comes from lived experience, maybe years of clinical observation that led to a new approach, you often can't trace that back to one specific university course.
There's no certificate for it.
And that's where the author draws this very clear line in the sand. They state that this article is not a defense of GLP.
And it's not just a list of their qualifications as evidence of worth.
No, they say the work itself does not begin there, and it does not end there.
That refusal.
Yeah.
That's really the engine of their whole argument, isn't it?
It is. That refusal is what separates the two competing ideas. They're essentially saying, I refuse to play by the rules of external validation because those rules are fundamentally biased against the way my knowledge was actually formed.
Which brings us to that core distinction. If you're asking for external proof, the diploma, the certificate, the peer-reviewed paper, you're asking for documents from a system that might not even recognize this kind of knowledge.
Right.
The author says what you should be asking for is not proof.
So if it's not proof, what is it?
It's a request for situating.
Exactly. Situating. It's about giving an account of where this knowledge actually lives. It's defining its whole ecosystem, the personal, the professional, the context where it all grew.
This is where the focus just completely shifts. We move from demanding an argument to asking for a map.
A map. I like that. We're not trying to win a debate anymore.
They're just trying to trace the lineage.
Precisely. The pursuit is a lineage to be traced, a story of how it developed. And the goal becomes internal coherence, not external persuasion.
Okay, I get the philosophical importance of that move. You're rejecting the external bureaucracy for an internal truth. But let's hold on a second here for the practical listener. If we just start rejecting all established credentials, all sanctioned pathways, how do we as an audience tell the difference between genuine, hard-won expertise and just a very confident but baseless assertion? That's a real challenge.
That is the right question to ask, because this framework isn't saying throw out all standards. It's suggesting we change what we look for. When someone's knowledge insists on coherence, you look for internal consistency. You look for the lived results. You look for the depth that those 4 locations provide. The lineage itself becomes the validation.
Perfect. So let's trace this lineage. Let's start with the first location where this knowledge lives. The author says it's first and foremost in the body.
Yes. Knowledge in the body. This is so important because it really challenges that old academic idea of stripping knowledge of the human being. Knowledge in the body isn't just theory. It's felt.
Right, like a skilled craftsman or an athlete. Their expertise is in their muscle memory, their intuition.
Their immediate reaction time, yeah.
So for someone working with GLP, this might be the ability to just instantly recognize a pattern in someone's gestures or an emotional script that a linear processor might miss because they're only listening to the words.
It's that nonverbal knowing, the gut instinct. It's that built-up, embodied recognition that you just can't write down fully in a textbook. It's knowing when to step in or when to wait, not because a manual said so, but because your body, through tons of repetition and experience, has just internalized the rhythm of the work.
Okay, so if the body provides the instinct, then the second location, memory, provides the architecture for it.
Right. And memory here is much deeper than just recalling facts. It's the whole repository of every single instance, every challenge, every success, every failure that helped build that pattern recognition.
So memory gives the knowledge its history, its nuance.
You're not just remembering that GLP is a thing, you're remembering that one specific session from 3 years ago that finally made a really complex concept just click into place.
It's the decade-long internal database of what works and what doesn't that you draw on every single day.
And for a Gestalt processor, this is crucial. Their whole strength is seeing the big picture, the pattern, and that ability depends entirely on a deep, rich memory that has filed away and connected thousands of little pieces of data into one coherent framework.
So body is instinct, memory is the database. The third location is teaching. This is what brings the knowledge out into the world.
Teaching is the ultimate test of synthesis, isn't it?
It really is.
When you have to explain your most complex idea to someone else, that's when you find all the gaps in your own knowledge.
You have to simplify, clarify, build bridges between what you know and what they know.
It's the difference between just having a skill and truly understanding how that skill works.
You can be a great driver, but teaching someone to drive forces you to understand the mechanics of the clutch, not just the feel of it.
And every single time you teach, your own internal framework gets stress-tested, refined, and made stronger. Hoerricks' knowledge has been shaped by the questions and doubts of students and colleagues. Teaching is what confirms its practical coherence.
Which brings us to the final and maybe the most elusive pillar, time.
Knowledge acquired through time. This is just acknowledging that real expertise doesn't happen overnight. It recognizes that some kinds of understanding, especially ones tied to human behavior, just require you to be in the field for a long time before they become truly solid.
This is the anti-shortcut pillar.
Exactly. You can read every book on winemaking in a year, but you won't get the effect of an early frost on fermentation until you've actually lived through 4 or 5 different seasons of it.
Time throws all the variables at you, the unexpected things that only persistence can really teach you.
Time validates coherence. Knowledge that survives over time proves it can adapt and deepen. It suggests kind of maturity of insight that, a brand new certificate just can't give you.
So when you put these 4 together, the embodied instinct, the comprehensive memory, the synthesized teaching, and the patience of time, you really start to see why Hoerricks says the pursuit is a lineage to be traced, not an argument to be won. It changes the whole dynamic.
And this all circles right back to the author's identity as a Gestalt processor. Their whole way of making meaning, of seeing the world in patterns, has never fit neatly into the systems designed to validate it.
And that is the core conflict. Why would you seek legitimacy from a system, a linear sequential system like academia, that is structurally incapable of valuing your fundamental way of thinking?
It can't.
That's why those traditional standards are insufficient. They're trying to judge a symphony by the rules of a math problem.
This is a radical claim for internal authority. The knowledge doesn't need external sign-off because its power is self-evident in its own coherence, in its own history.
Which brings us to that fascinating description of this knowledge as something that waits.
Knowledge that waits, yeah. This might be the most profound contrast with the traditional model. Most expertise today is, it's out there actively seeking validation. It's aggressively pushing for acceptance, trying to persuade people.
All right.
Knowledge that waits is secure in its own structure. It's confident in its lineage.
It suggests a kind of fundamental trust that if the work is really coherent, if those four pillars are solid, that it will eventually be recognized, whether it checked the right institutional boxes or not.
It stands on the strength of its own lived history, completely independent of external approval ratings.
And if we bring this back to you, the listener, it means we have to sort of rethink our approach. When you encounter a non-traditional expert, instead of instinctively asking for the CV or the certificate,
You have to ask, can I trace this person's lineage? Is their framework coherent?
Yeah, so to synthesize this really powerful insight from Jaime Hoerricks, what we've been exploring is this essential tension. The tension between knowledge validated by external systems credentials, proof versus knowledge validated internally.
Through lived coherence and personal lineage.
Anchored in the body, memory, teaching, and time.
The author is challenging us to give up our bias for the easy answer, the sanctioned pathway. When we demand simple proof, we often miss the rich, messy, and nonlinear process by which real transformative understanding is actually made.
We're asking for the destination instead of exploring the journey.
It forces you to be a more active, more critical listener. You're not just checking boxes anymore. You're evaluating the internal consistency and the long-term depth of someone's insight.
Which leads us to our final provocative thought for you to take away from this deep dive.
If traditional validation systems consistently fail to recognize some forms of genuine embodied expertise, what does it mean for you when knowledge insists on coherence over persuasion and simply waits to be understood? Are you capable of stepping outside that demand for external proof long enough to trace that deep internal lineage?